I'm reporting from the ASEAN Summit here at KL Convention Centre, where Malaysia is in the spotlight as chair of the bloc. Now, joining me on the show is Datuk Professor Dr. Muhammad Faiz Abdullah, Chairperson of the Institute of Strategic and International Studies, better known as ISIS Malaysia. Prof. Faiz, thank you so much for taking time. I know it's been a very busy few days, running up and down and attending all the related events and summits happening concurrently, but there are a few that I want to focus on in our conversation today. Let's talk about the KL Peace Accord that was signed between Thailand and Cambodia, and I think this ASEAN Summit this time around is particularly special because we have these two countries who have had decades of border disputes and border conflicts, and sitting together at a table, signing a ceasefire agreement presided by our Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and the US President Donald Trump. Talk to me a little bit about why this was quite a special moment, and a little bit about the role of Washington and Kuala Lumpur in this peace accord. Sure,
yeah. You hit it right on the head there. It is a momentous occasion for two reasons. As you say, you are not looking at a conflict that erupted overnight or just recently. Yeah, it is long in the brewing. It could take any slightest incident to trigger that conflagration, and so it happened a couple of months ago. So even before we jump into talking about the peace deal, we have to go back to the initial stages when it happened and what were the immediate responses of ASEAN member states, and in this case, Malaysia being chair for ASEAN 2025. So the immediate thing that was done was Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Well, he sure knows how to work the phones, basically. Yeah, so it was a case of phone diplomacy, back and forth, various parties, the parties that were involved in the conflict, as well as other parties. All that came into a sort of a simmering pot. Yeah, it could either boil over or it could cool down. So what happens is that under this particular style of diplomacy, we managed to get the whole thing cinema, and the following day, we got the parties here to agree to a ceasefire. And I think it's important for people to differentiate between a peace deal and a ceasefire. I'm not being pedantic here, but it's important, and because people will say, why, in a week's time there was fighting again. That's why it was just called a ceasefire. You need certain excuses for one or the other party for things to start it all over again. But I think on balance, it was a pretty good ceasefire, which eventually, accumulated to the process where there's going to be a serious resolution to come to a peace deal. And as you mentioned, the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord that was signed, and will become historical, was part of it. I have to mention also the fact that it was indeed significant that President Trump was also here. Right. And I would reckon it this way. Malaysia provided, through Anwar Ibrahim's leadership, a neutral place for ASEAN. Yeah, that is very important. Yeah, because you couldn't have it in any other place. And also geographically, most proximate is Malaysia, and also politically the right one because we are the chair. And the case of the United States, they provided what I would say the economic muscle.
The pressure.
Pressure. To be fair, it's a trade deal offer. And no trade deals unless the guns become silent. Basically, that's what it is. Sometimes you need pressure to get things going. Yeah. So basically, you have that balance.
So you used the term phone diplomacy, which I thought was quite interesting. Working the phones.
Yes.
This was really quite a test of Anwar Ibrahim's leadership and ASEAN's chairmanship. So when you think about the fact that Anwar Ibrahim had to resort to leader-to-leader intervention, what does that say to you about the weaknesses within ASEAN lacking the institutional capacity to deal with any conflict between its member states?
I don't think so. respectfully, I don't think it's a weakness at all. As you know, there is a process and there's the outcome. Sometimes people tend to say, you know, they downplay the importance of process, but process is very important. Without the proper process, you can't get the outcome. But of course, it's not about going through the process, round and round and not getting things out. But here you have the outcome, which is the peace deal. What happens is that when one talks about institutionalizing of the peace process, it can only come into effect if there is that foundational push. And the foundational push usually comes top down. Because if the leaders are not prepared to stick the head, to go the extra mile, to call each other, to say, hey, let's get this thing going, then the follow-through at the back would just be as lethargic. So we don't want that. Right. So you have a classic case of example where the leaders themselves are always prepared to pick up the phone. Let's deal with it. And once the signal goes top down, it moves. So I think I don't think it's a failure here or it shows any weakness in the institution. Having said that, though, with time, probably it's a good thing we did not have that much of conflict history. Yeah, for it to build up. Yeah, you give it to those. We don't have
that experience.
That's right. You give it those guys who've been fighting for years and years. Oh yeah, they've got it all institutionalized. In that sense, I think it's a good thing.
Silver lining there, absolutely.
Yes.
You talked about Donald Trump's presence here in as part of presiding over the KL Accord. How do you think? So I'm curious to know Washington's interest in the Accord, but also how Washington might view Malaysia's role as facilitator. As we know, Donald Trump has claimed this as another deal another peace deal that he's brokered. So he's a peacemaker, positioning himself as a peacemaker. Do you think Malaysia is getting enough credit for the role that we played in brokering this?
You've hit it right. It's Trump himself who have publicly and openly said, we have to thank Malaysia. Even before he came in. We have to thank Malaysia for this. I think it was interviewed, I think, Air Force One itself, and he was asked about it. And somebody said, and that it's Malaysia, it's Malaysia. I think he repeated it 3 times. And he also used a term that, referring to Anwar Ibrahim as a good man. We're not very sure whether that's good or not, but the point is he did say that. And when he was here yesterday, I was privy, I was there. So there are 2 things which stood out. I've always said, the only predictable thing about Trump is his unpredictability. So it could go either way. Yeah. But in the case of yesterday, it went beautifully all the way. It was good. He didn't have anything negative to say about anybody, except the usual, 1 or 2 words about his predecessor, and we don't need to name names here, but for this part of the world, he was really very, very magnanimous in his words. I would say it's rather uncharacteristic of Trump. Yeah, in that sense, it was really good. So that is a plus factor. I might even want to mention that, it's so good that it was an extraordinary display of camaraderie when he got the Prime Minister to ride with him in the Beast.
Yes, was that breaking protocol?
Breaking protocol is one thing, is like, that goes to show the level in terms of the chemistry. You're talking about fantastic mixture here, the rapport that was built. Yeah.
But that's interesting. So we want to play the gracious host as chair of ASEAN as host country. But did we get that balance right? Because we know Trump arrived in Malaysia amid protests as well. Trump being an active, veto country in the Security Council against ending the genocide in Gaza. Did we get that balance right between Malaysian hospitality and standing firm to our principles on humanity?
We definitely got it right smack in the middle, because on the one hand, we are playing host and we are the chair. It is on us to ensure that we conduct the position and use of power as chair not to be influenced by our respective geopolitical concerns, which is only germane to our country.
Right. Not everyone in ASEAN agrees.
Exactly. So you have to get that role right. Even beyond that, what is the point of trying to show that it would be very good if you could boycott a superpower like the US? How would it bring any effort that it would be good? How would it move the needle towards resolution in Gaza? The point is that he, like it or not, has done something in relation to the comprehensive Gaza plan. Although we did not agree 100%, we agreed substantively enough to show both moral and physical support. And that was good. In any event, we did not dial down in relation to our position on Gaza. We remained firm on that. Yeah. But I didn't really answer fully your question earlier. Donald Trump gave very strong credit to the role played by Anwar Ibrahim, by Malaysia, in resolving this war between Cambodia and Thailand. At the same time, he gave due credit to the respective leaders of Cambodia and Thailand, which goes to show it's a very fair, balanced assessment of the whole situation. I use the word uncharacteristic because it appears that he seems to be shooting his mouth most of the time and tends to end up on the wrong side. Yeah. So in this case, it was good.
Do you think the conversation during the ride in the Beast was one that could advance Malaysia's, you talked about camaraderie, but could advance Malaysia's relationship with the US bilaterally?
Only God knows what happened in there, what was conversed, but I would imagine that given the character of Anwar Ibrahim, given his astuteness as a statesman, affability, you know, it's dangerous. You can be sucked into his vortex of diplomacy. He is so charming, yeah? So, and then given the strong character of Trump and the fact that they could ride in, I would imagine that would be the best of the 4-hour meeting that anyone could have. It's like more than a 30-minute ride.
Yes.
I would say that in terms of pristine 4-hour meetings, that ride would be the pièce de résistance, the very top, the best of it. And
agreed.
Yes, and I'm sure it was a good one because after the ride, you know, the bilateral was extensively longer than usual. After which there was the, you know, US ASEAN Summit, which was done in very good. And people would say that, no, go easy. Trump may not have the patience to listen. He listened through everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you hope?
He did not show signs that, oh, can we cut this short?
Okay.
Yeah, at least there was
in a good
that.
mood, say,
He
after
definitely
the ride.
Good mood after the ride, during the ride, during the conference itself, and after the bilateral, all the way.
Okay. Well, then talk to me a little bit about whether Trump's presence here has really drowned out the ASEAN agenda. So I do wonder about that because there was a bit of Trump mania happening, all the global media covering Trump's presence here, which is great because ASEAN gets a mention in all the global headlines. But do you think that we were strong enough to assert our voice, our agenda, amid all the noise happening when global leaders converge?
I don't think there's any problem at all. If indeed it has really highlighted the presence of ASEAN as a huge bloc and given credence to, given credit by President Trump himself. And during his intervention, he was asked several times he could interject, which he didn't. He only had good things to say. Of course, you could put it down to just PR, but what would he? He's not a person known to be pretty adept at PR, right? He's known to be shooting his mouth. But here, he was very gracious and he said positive things. That's number one. Number two, none of the issues that are important for ASEAN, none of it has been, you know, drowned out in any way. Yeah, in the opening remarks, the Prime Minister made clear what the situation is, got a lot of publicity on that, and followed by the plenary session, pretty strong stuff. And even as we speak, you know, later this afternoon, we have the East Asia Summit. Trump has to go back, of course, but Rubio is here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that speaks volumes of how important it is.
I agree. The East Asia Summit, the 20th East Asia Summit, which is held along the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit, is really quite interesting because I think it brings all the right people to the table.
Yes.
But Prof. Faiz, that's where I want to ask you where the opportunity lies. You've got you've got the 11 ASEAN member states sitting at the table, you've got all the dialogue partners, you've got Russia, US, China, you've got Australia, Korea, Japan, all the big trade partners.
Great, and
yes.
don't forget you have Brazil.
Absolutely.
You have South Africa.
Yes.
Yes. In fact, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And I don't want to be seen to be just mentioning US and US. You've got the Global South in its strongest showing ever.
Correct, yeah. So we have all these great leaders, foreign ministers sitting at the table for the East Asia Summit. How do we make sure we don't squander this opportunity? What is it that you think should be on the table when it's set up so perfectly already?
Each and every member state and each and every participant, the guest and the others who have been there, must be given the chance to say what they want to say.
Okay.
And having said that, it will be the duty on the SOMs, and in the case of Track 2 people like us, to get the issues boiling, get the interaction so that it can be taken to a level at eventually to be resolved if they have differences. The commonalities should be set in so that we now really breathe and give new lease on life for the East Asia Summit, which was seen to be in a state of comatose.
Yeah.
And this is the definitive moment where we have that.
Okay. Can you elaborate to me, what do you mean by state of comatose? Has it not been tapped to its full potential before?
It's comatose because it became rudimentary, it became routine. It became a situation where the parties came in with their standard scripts, read it, and that's it. Not prepared to listen to the other side, or even if they did, it would be perfunctory.
Right.
It's like left in, right out. It's that nothing is going to happen. Fixed positions. No organic development after that. We are looking at redoing this, and it would be indeed momentous if during the time of Malaysia's chair we're able to carry this out. And of course, we are looking at the successor. Yeah, and it's no pushover. You're looking at the Philippines,
Yeah.
you know.
What do you expect how do you expect their chairmanship to be like next year?
Going by the statements of Bongbong yesterday, he articulated the Philippines' position very well vis-a-vis the importance of ASEAN centrality. I think it's going to be good.
Okay.
It's going to be good.
But
yes.
they do have a different relationship with the US and China.
You can have. I think it's important to stress that centrality does not warrant or require uniformity.
Okay.
But the major themes that are germane to ASEAN, like for example, the need to be collectively doing so that you can promote each other, should be there and represented through cohesive action. But it does not mean that Malaysia must have the same position exactly on how they articulate the way Vietnam does, or the way Singapore does, or the way the Philippines does. If they're prone to a bit more one side, or they pivot slightly to that side, it's fine.
But Malaysia still has a role to put forth our leadership, even though we're not chair. Where do you see that role coming, and what role can we play in terms of making sure that we still maintain our thought leadership, our leadership in action, and principle as well?
I think this is a case where it will have to be germane to the soft power that is inherent in the case of the leadership. You have, you know, a lackadaisical leadership, then you can't expect others follow through. I think it's in the very nature of this very dynamic leadership we have in the Prime Minister that you see this soft power, you know, really raiding itself and having that influence. Yeah, a certain level of moral suasion among ASEAN member states that they feel that, wow, this is good for us to follow through.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the use of the term moral suasion.
Yeah, and
because
you know
so
him playing the phones, right?
Yes.
He'll still continue the call.
You also reminded me when you brought up track to diplomacy.
Yeah.
You reminded me that the work of ASEAN doesn't start and end in an ASEAN summit.
Exactly.
So ISIS Malaysia, organizations like ISIS Malaysia plays a real role in making sure that the agenda of ASEAN is continued or sustained throughout the year. What are you looking at, particularly in the last couple of months where we're still chair, we're not giving it up just yet, in terms of making sure that it moves towards real concrete policy for an inclusive and sustainable ASEAN?
In our case, I'm speaking on behalf as chair of ISIS Malaysia. There will certainly be no winter of self-fulfillment. There will be the glorious summer of wanting to work and work continuously. And that is the role that we have been destined to play. How do we do it? We continue to have interaction with strong think tanks, strong counterparts of ASEAN member states, and to cut across this on major issues that matter. In fact, the issues that you have raised, for example, what are we going to do about East Asia Summit after this at the Track 2 level? And then we have the ASEAN Regional Forum, which is part of the pillars that move things.
Right.
And then that is the current thing that's going in this age, which is the ASEAN Power Grid. It's the virtual bread and butter of moving the economy. And not only that, and that links very closely with climate change, energy transition. These are all issues which are germane, not just G2G, but across the pillars, and the Track 2 players have a lot. I don't mind just sharing, just 2 weeks ago, was it just last week, I got back from Shanghai.
Okay.
It was a big gathering of think tanks talking about ASEAN and China. Yeah, those were some pretty issues that are quite related to this. There's always the issue, how do we measure and try to balance ASEAN, China, and ASEAN, and of course, the other elephant in the room, which is ASEAN and the US. I said this is a wrong question. We do not need to do any balancing. They balance themselves. We need to concentrate on ASEAN sui generis, because by itself, it will be able to either repel or attract the forces. If we get our act together, the forces want to come to us. But if we don't put the money where our mouth is, and we talk of centrality when we act in no cohesive manner, then people will see us as weak. And when we are weak, the ASEAN member states themselves will be just as weak. Basically that's how we go about it.
We have an 11th member of ASEAN now. Yes, in the time that we have left. I do want to mention Timor-Leste's ascension into ASEAN. The family is growing.
Yes.
The family is growing.
Yes.
How do you see the 11th member strengthening the bloc?
Okay. I was expecting that kind of question, and I think you've fallen into the trap, which is to expect what Timor-Leste can do
bring
for
to
ASEAN.
But
I've always said,
yes.
ask not what Timor-Leste can do for ASEAN, ask what ASEAN can do for Timor-Leste. After all, inclusivity means that.
Right.
Timor-Leste is tiny, it's small. It's a fledgling in terms of, we need to go all the way out. Yeah, virtually help it. And with that, it can stand on its feet. It has got good resources. Once, give it 5 years, let it build up. Yeah, then it will be able to reciprocate the help given by the member states. I've spoken to you before of the asymmetry in terms of economic power. So it's not fair to expect Timor-Leste, what can you do for us? What you're doing is that by joining us, you give us that strong sense of cohesiveness and centrality, and that ASEAN itself is a very inclusive group. It does not neglect the people around it, near it, the country near it. It doesn't exclude and say, look, you're just too small, we marginalize you. That level of expression of magnanimity is what ASEAN is getting from Timor-Leste's inclusion. So what do we do? We help them.
I like that. It strengthens our values, right?
That's right.
Prosper thy neighbor.
Yes, 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 exactly.
Professor Faiz, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you for giving us an insight into what happens behind all those closed-door meetings. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Melisa, for having me. Thank you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night. you.